Hey, I don't know if you've heard this, but the Sacramento Kings suck, and they're trying to blow it up. The problem is the two ostensibly best players on the team are either not very portable in the case of Sabonis or severely overpaid in the case of Levine. Also, Sabonis is a little overpaid. But their third best player, DeMar DeRozan, although honestly who Sacramento Kings' best player is depends very much on the game you're watching, he's in a unique position of being not very portable, but also not being severely overpaid, which has been the biggest obstacle for Levine and Sabonis. Even still, Sacramento will likely not end up getting much of anything value-wise by trading him other than just moving on. With him making just $25 million annually for the next 2 years, it's not hard at all to find matching contracts for the guy, which makes him the most obtainable 20-point per game scorer in the NBA, or near 20. He's currently averaging 18 to be fair. But a big reason why DeMar isn't overpaid like Levine or Sabonis is because the league has collectively realized that his play style, as much as it generates solid individual numbers, has gone the way of the dinosaur, and for good reason. So in today's video, I wanted to discuss why DeMar has fallen out of favor in the NBA, as well as what he could still do for some hypothetical team that he would land on. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video. We are just about 1,000 subscribers away from 150K, so I would really appreciate it if you subscribed if you are not already. Also, hype the video if you are on mobile, as that helps it perform better in the algorithm. I don't know what it is either, man, but it is apparently good. First things first, let's discuss DeMar DeRozan's rapidly declining stock. Not that it's declined that much from what it was like towards the tail end of his time in Chicago, but basically at the end of that, through these Sacramento years, yeah, DeMar DeRozan just is not perceived as very valuable anymore. For one, he's old. He's 36, and that's fine. I think we have just gotten so used to, like, Steph and LeBron and Kevin Durant and even Chris Paul to a lesser extent, like dudes that are just sticking around and still having such major impact at the age of 36. But, like, it's fine to be old and not as good as you were at that age. That is the norm. As a result, he's not the athlete that he was, and therefore not the slasher that he was. And that was probably the thing that he was most valuable for in the NBA in his absolute prime. Yeah, he had the mid-range game the whole time throughout his career, but that was more so like a supplement to what was overall a really, really good slashing game where DeMar would get to the basket really quick, super athletic, super strong finisher, good handle, also like good at getting to the free throw line. That ended up ultimately being the main source of his offense in like his Toronto years. But as he got older and older, he has relied more and more on that mid-range game. Now, what's interesting is that he's actually gotten better at the mid-range shot than he was earlier in his Toronto days. Part of that is just that, like, spacing-wise, mid-range shooting, mid-range percentages have gone up rather significantly. Part of it is just because role players are not taking them anymore, but also part of it is just there is more space to operate in the mid-range because defenses are so focused on not giving up three-pointers on the perimeter. They kind of allow mid-range jump shots more so than any other shot in the game. They would prefer if you take that shot. So as a result, DeMar's mid-range numbers have actually looked a lot better in recent years as opposed to earlier on in his career where he was still a little bit above average, but like on crazy high volume. So like still good, but also not amazing. But he's had, especially like in Chicago, some amazing mid-range seasons. Another part of that is that he also just removed some long twos out of his shot diet, started shooting shorter and shorter mid-range shots. But as good as he is at this shot, he's one of the best mid-range shooters in the NBA. It's just not a super valuable skill as a primary skill. There is still a lot of room for mid-range shooting to be heavily valued in the league. I mean, right now, the best guard in the entire league is the most prolific, high-volume, and high-efficiency mid-range shooter in the game. I'm talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but it's not the only thing that he can do. He's also one of the best slashers in the game, and at least thus far this year, he is really hitting his threes in a way that he never has before. So that is a three-level scorer who is also phenomenal in the mid-range, but it's not the only thing that he relies on, where DeMar is at this point where if he's not taking a mid-range shot, he's probably not doing that much of value. He's not getting to the rim the way that he used to. He's certainly not getting fouled the way that he used to. It's just so much of his offense banks on the least valuable shot in the game. And even if he is elite at it, it's still not nearly as good as having a player who's an elite slasher or an elite three-point shooter, and ideally both. He has also improved as a passer since being traded from the Raptors. Like, what's really interesting about DeMar, I would say, is that like Toronto years, up until like the very tail end, he's really riding his athleticism. That is by far the biggest reason why he's as good as he is. And then he really developed more of the skill aspects of his game, to the point that I wonder what his peak would have looked like if his passing improvements and his mid-range improvements happened while his slashing was at its absolute peak. But in San Antonio, he damn near became a point guard for a while. Same thing happened a little bit on the Chicago Bulls after Lonzo Ball went down. But the issue is, scoring and passing have a direct correlation with each other, as I like to highlight at any given chance. But like, he just does not have the same scoring gravity that he used to, because he's not slashing to the basket, making the defense collapse, and instead he's just ISOing one-on-one, gonna take a post fadeaway off of the dribble. Like, that is offense that the defense is not going to bring a second defender towards. They're not going to make major mistakes trying to cover that. They're just going to trust the one-on-one matchup, and it ends up being pretty bad, stagnant offense, because he's not really generating any leverage for his teammates. He is creating his own shot, but he is rarely creating shots for others, even if he is better at making the right read when it is available. And that's been especially the case with Sacramento this year, and I would say that's the case for the Kings in general this season. A lot of just, whether it is Russell Westbrook, Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, it is just give that guy the ball and they're gonna try and ISO, and then like maybe someone brings help for some reason, even though you really don't need to, and that's a kick out. But like, for the most part, it's one of the most unorganized, basic offenses in the NBA, and it's not doing DeMar any favors in terms of looking like he's a super valuable shot creator outside of his own looks. On top of that, he's not a positive defender. He's never been that positive a defender, but he's probably worse now than he was at his absolute peak, and he has very minimal off-ball game. So he falls into this category. And this is kind of the worst place to be in the NBA, because it's a hyper talented position to be in while simultaneously not being as valued as players who are less talented but fit the mold. Like, DeMar just simply isn't good enough to have him have the ball all the time, but he's really not that good when he doesn't have the ball. So you get this kind of paradoxical situation where it's like, yeah, DeMar can score 20 points with the ball in his hands, but your offense will be worse if the ball is in his hands to the extent that it needs to be in order for him to be scoring 20 a game. So it's just kind of a lose-lose situation, and DeMar can put up really good stats, but is your team's offense going to be that good? I can personally attest from the Chicago Bulls years where it's like, yeah, DeMar's averaging 25, 27 points per game. He's doing it on good efficiency, but the offense is really not all that much better when he's on the floor versus off. He has made minor strides in his three-point shooting, to be fair. He's certainly taken more threes over the last couple of years than he did historically, and this year he is shooting 37% on 2 3-point attempts per game from just the eye test. I haven't actually looked at the stats, but I can tell you just eye test alone, he takes almost all of his threes out of the corner. So I think that's a factor in it. That's a shorter shot. Maybe it feels more natural to him than an above the break three, but whatever it might be, 37% is good, but two attempts per game for such a high volume shot creator is not. So at this point, with all of those things taken into consideration, I think DeMar would best serve as a sixth man at this point in his career. At $24 million a year in salary, coming off of the bench and scoring like 16, 17, 18 points per game, that is the most valuable role that he could have at this point. Someone who you don't necessarily need to close with, someone who you don't need to hand the keys to the offense necessarily, but like if you need a guy to go get a bucket in like kind of an absence of your starters, he's a good option for that. He could also be a desperation addition to a team that just desperately needs that shot creating boost, but doesn't have the assets for some big swing. I'm mainly referring to the Milwaukee Bucks because they're really rumored to be trading for him. But whoever adds him, they can't be expecting anything long term. He's definitely a 1 to 2 year rental. And as for what Sacramento can expect in return, it's not going to be much. It's probably going to be salary filler plus a young guy, like a not very good young player, but like a young enough that you can be like, maybe there's some untapped potential there, or like 2 to 3 second round picks, whatever it might be. It's pretty much just going to be salary filler and then like something else sprinkled in that makes it not terrible. With all that said, what are the teams who don't need such a player / does not have the salary filler necessary? Well, in the East, it's Detroit. I actually kind of like the idea of him in New York. However, they don't have the contracts to make that work. Boston doesn't make sense for them, especially if Jason Tatum is possibly coming back this year. Orlando, I don't really think they need that added shot creation. Their offense has actually been much, much better lately. Philly has enough guard play as is. Atlanta, I don't think fits into either the Trae Young version of the team or the non-Trae Young version of the team. Like whichever direction the Hawks end up going, I don't think DeMar is a good idea either way. Same for Cleveland. Obviously, Chicago's not trading for him, nor would the Hornets, Nets, Pacers, or Wizards, who are all at the bottom of the barrel in the East right now. And out West, obviously, OKC has no reason to trade for him. The Lakers don't really have any reason to trade for him. Nor does Denver, nor does Houston. San Antonio, no. Phoenix makes some sense. They just don't have contracts that work. Golden State kind of makes some sense, but the best they could do is a Kuminga swap, and he was getting a DNP the other day. So, like, technically DeMar would be better than Kuminga at this point, but, like, I really, really don't like the idea of DeMar out there alongside Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green and possibly a center who can't shoot. Like, the spacing issues are just bad enough with the Warriors lineup construction between Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. They don't need to add another cog in there with DeMar DeRozan. So that doesn't really make sense. And then the Jazz and the Pelicans are also just not really in the position where they would want to trade for him. But that leaves us with 6 NBA teams that could potentially trade for DeMar. Miami, Milwaukee, Minnesota, Memphis. For some reason, 4 of them are cities that start with M. Portland, and Dallas. Actually, there's 6. There's the Clippers. I don't know why I didn't include the Clippers. So, wait, no, that's 7. God damn it. 7 teams, the Clippers as well. Miami, it honestly doesn't make sense to me, but they are rumored to be interested in trading for DeMar, so I suppose I have to throw them in here. It feels like they have enough perimeter creation between Tyler Hero, Norm McDonald, Norman Powell. Also, Davion Mitchell has been doing a good bit. Andrew Wiggins can create his own shot. Like, I feel like there's enough there that it doesn't make sense, but technically they have been rumored, so a trade package would be Terry Rozier, which, just as a sidebar, could there be a more Sacramento Kings move than trading for Terry Rozier right now with all the shit that is going on? But Terry Rozier makes a perfect matching salary. He is still on the Miami Heat, just like on a leave right now while he deals with all of his legal issues, but I think they're still perfectly capable of trading him if the Kings would take that. And they also have a 19-year-old point guard who is 6'5", who has only played 1 minute of NBA ball. I don't know much about this guy given the 1 minute of NBA ball, so if he's secretly some coveted asset by the Heat, then my mistake. But his name, and I'm going to probably say it wrong, is Kasparis Yakuchanis. That's a young player who does not play at all. Maybe has potential. 6'5" rookie point guard. That's interesting. 19 years old. Like, there's probably something there. That's not a bad return for the Kings, but I don't really think it makes sense for Miami to trade for him. Milwaukee is a case of desperation. Like, they just need shot creation for cheap. Obviously, it's starting to look a lot like Giannis is going to get traded, but as of right now, that has not happened. And trading for DeMar could be a way to, like, technically be like, look, Giannis, we're still putting talent around you. It's very, very desperate, like I said, but still, that trade package would be Kyle Kuzma as well as Andre Jackson Jr. They also had a point guard who I know nothing about who's like 20 who could maybe be in there instead of Andre, but whichever it is, whatever young player. And also Is there a more Sacramento Kings player than a 30-year-old Kyle Kuzma? That's about as Sacramento Kings as it gets. Minnesota could use some shot creation help. I have strongly suggested multiple times, not that this is a unique position to have, but like they really, really need to trade for a point guard. So I don't think this is the move. Yes, DeMar DeRozan is a solid playmaker, as highlighted earlier, but he's not a fucking point guard. So I really don't like that idea. Not to mention, Minnesota would have to give up quite a lot. Mike Conley, Joan Berenger, Rob Dillingham, and Joe Ingles. So as a result, because you're literally trading 4 players here, 2 of which are young players who have at least something interesting about them, Sacramento will probably have to attach a couple of second-round picks or maybe their rookie big man as well. Whatever it might be, Sacramento, that's too much for DeMar DeRozan. So the Timberwolves should spend their assets and their money better than that. But technically, this is an option. Memphis, I fucking hate the idea of them trading for DeMar DeRozan. The spacing does not need any help being bad. Like, he does kind of fill the scoring void that Desmond Bane has left behind, but really the main problem with scoring with this Grizzlies team right now has been their 2 best players and them not scoring enough. And DeMar DeRozan's not going to fix that. He's going to make it actively harder for those guys to get it going the way that they were last season, especially in the case of Jaren. Like, that's just going to muck up the spacing further. It's a disastrous idea. I hate it a lot. The trade package would be KCP and GG Jackson. KCP could probably be rerouted elsewhere, so Sacramento could maybe even get like some second-round picks out of him in exchange for just a really bad salary. And GG Jackson, from all accounts from Rudy, has kind of just fallen to the wayside, so it doesn't really matter much for the Grizzlies to get rid of him. That's not a terrible return for the Kings. Portland needs help on the perimeter as well, but they're also kind of a young team, so it doesn't really, I don't know, it seems like a Band-Aid solution. I don't really love that idea. They do have Drew Holiday, so it's not exclusively a young team, but like, yeah, I just don't like it. I'm saying that for every damn team here that I really just don't like the fit, but that's kind of where DeMar DeRozan is at this point in his career. The other issue for Portland is they do not have a clear trade package. Like, the option is either Matisse Thybulle and Scoot Henderson, which I wouldn't do that. Not saying that I'm super high on Scoot Henderson, but I'm also not entirely out on him. And the only way that I would be willing to trade Scoot for DeMar is if I was entirely out on him. So either it's that, and Sacramento would have to throw in something else, like quite a sweetener, or it's a swap for Jeremy Grant. And frankly, I'd rather just keep Jeremy. Like, yeah, technically DeMar is probably a better shot creator than Jeremy Grant, but that is where the list of things that DeMar is better than Jeremy at stops, because he's a way worse defender, he's a way worse three-point shooter, worse rebounder. Like, I would just rather have Jeremy Grant personally, because he's not going to interrupt the flow of the offense the same way that DeMar would. Dallas is desperate for any kind of perimeter creation, as is highlighted by the fact that they've been leaning on old man Klay Thompson and an undrafted rookie point guard. I will be doing a video over on Little Rusty about Ryan Nembhard, because he's actually been really awesome lately, and Dallas has started to win some games. So if I were them, I would just keep riding with that, at least until that well starts to go dry. But your hypothetical trade package, I'm actually going to give you 2 here. It could be Klay Thompson and Caleb Martin, or it could be Caleb Martin, Najee Marshall, and D'Angelo Russell, plus some second-round picks in either of these deals. If I was Dallas, I don't know, it's kind of a weird point, because Klay Thompson has been better lately. Like, seems like he's starting to beat some of the like fully washed allegations, because he's obviously washed from what he was at his absolute peak, but like, he's been playing a lot better lately. However, he's like 35 or some shit, 36. Meanwhile, Najee Marshall still can't hit a 3, but he's a good scorer inside the arc, and he's solid defensively. So like, he's a player who has a much longer future in the NBA, but he's probably a little bit less important than Klay Thompson is right now. So it really depends what kind of competitive balance you're trying to strike. And I've been saying already, like, Dallas should be intentionally bad. There is no reason not to be. They're not working it out to be a contender this year. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. Even if they have been winning more recently, let's be fucking real. But if they want to go in a more competitive direction in the immediate term, then I would probably do the deal where I keep Klay Thompson, but it's hard to find anything to be positive about in this video because DeMar DeRozan is just a depressing player to have to find trade destinations for, as is the case for everyone on the fucking Sacramento Kings, because the Kings managed to fuck themselves so hard that they built their team around a trio of players who are damn near untradeable, which is saying a lot about that franchise. But finally, the Los Angeles Clippers are the #1 most rumored team to be interested in going after DeMar DeRozan because, of course, there's one thing the Clippers need. It's a veteran presence in the locker room. The package would be Bogdan Bogdanovic plus Brook Lopez, and then either some second rounders or Cam Christie / Kobe Saunders or Sanders, whichever one it is. I've actually liked what I've seen out of both Cam and Kobe over there from limited sample, but like they've done some interesting stuff. So they're an interesting enough young player. And then Bogdan Bogdanovic, like I actually think this makes a good amount of sense for the Clippers just because they are strictly replacing Bogdan Bogdanovic's shot creation with DeMar DeRozan's, although Bogdan is a far better three-point shooter, so he is a more valuable off-the-ball guy. And then I also don't really know how many opportunities DeMar DeRozan is going to get as a ball handler when James Harden is on the team. Like, yeah, in the minutes that James Harden's not playing, DeMar should be the guy. But in the minutes that he is, which is going to be a majority of the game, I really don't see where DeMar fits into all of that, especially if Kawhi is also playing. Like, just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So as you can tell, after I've gone through all of the top teams for DeMar, there just really isn't a spot that makes much sense. Like, in the case of like this Clippers deal, it's fine because what the fuck else are the Clippers going to do, I suppose? Like, yeah, I could see this making them technically a little bit better in the short term without giving up anything much of substance. But like, that's really your best case scenario if you're trading for DeMar, is that he will be a band-aid solution to a team that is in desperate need of a larger solution. So it's either basically DeMar DeRozan is a half measure, to quote my guy Mike Ehrmantraut. You don't want to be doing half measures. DeMar DeRozan is the definition of a half measure in terms of trading for a perimeter creator in the NBA in 2025. Like, if you want to do it on the cheap without any risk of giving up too much, DeMar DeRozan is your guy. But if you actually really need a boost on the perimeter, you are better off giving up more for a player who will fit better and has a longer term future with your franchise. So, yeah, any team that's bleeding out and is like, I guess a Band-Aid will fix this, they're going to be very unpleasantly surprised. Is that even an expression? It won't go well, is what I'm getting at. DeMar DeRozan, maybe he just gets bought out, or something that Rudy mentioned to me, possible the Kings would like attach more shit to DeMar and maybe make it like DeMar's just a part of the deal, but also are you giving up anything resembling? Like, why are the Kings making a win now trade at this point? They obviously shouldn't be doing that. I think whatever it might be, it'll probably end up being pretty underwhelming for everyone involved. That is it. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.